Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So last night we had elections, our probably biggest election night since the Georgia runoffs back in December, in which we had the Wisconsin Supreme Court election up for grabs. You also saw some special elections for legislative districts in Wisconsin. You also saw some statewide referendums. And we also saw the Chicago mayoral election to replace Lori Lightfoot, who went down in the initial primary. And the results were a little bit disappointing, to say the least. We're going to get to the good, we're going to get to the bad, and we're going to get to the ugly about this, but the conservatives lost the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin. We're going to do a little bit of an autopsy report on that. What exactly went wrong? What are the problems here? And how can conservatives break their underperformance/losing streak in this country? We're going to dive into it. But first, I have to tell you guys about our very good friends over at Noble Gold. The second and third largest bank failures in history happened last month. The government is taking steps to guarantee all deposits, which means more money printing. Thousands have approached Noble Gold Investments to secure their wealth with gold. Gold is the most stable asset outside of government control, so hurry and go to noblegoldinvestments.com to secure your wealth. Bag a free 5-ounce America the Beautiful coin if you qualify. noblegoldinvestments.com. That is noblegoldinvestments.com. So, an utter disaster in Wisconsin, but we're going to start off with some positive news out of the state of Wisconsin. Republicans won the special election for State Senate District 8, which entails that Republicans will have a supermajority in the state Senate, which means they're going to have a greater chance at overriding vetoes of Tony Evers, which will increase their power. That is until the Supreme Court decides to redraw the maps in the Democrats' favor after the other result last night, but still, for the time being, this is a victory. Dan Nodal, very solid on the issues from what I've seen. He said he would vote to impeach Janet, no jail Janet, the liberal judge that won, but ironically, he outperformed Dan Kelly by over 10 percentage points in that district, which is interesting. But furthermore, you look at the ballot measures, conditions of release before conviction, you see that they're 2/3. Again, these are conservative ballot measures here. Cash bail. Cash bail was approved even in Madison and Milwaukee by 35 points statewide even. An impressive victory for people that are tough on crime. Also, the welfare benefit requirement overwhelmingly passed even in Madison and Milwaukee there. So what do you see? You see the conservative ballot measures winning big statewide, even if they lost the Supreme Court, which is arguably more consequential, and we'll get to that. But the Chicago mayoral election, Brandon Johnson, who was very far left, defeated Paul Vallis, who is kind of like the centrist or old school Dem, who's like tough on crime compared to other Dems. He's still liberal. He's not exactly perfect or ideal, but it's Chicago. He'd be the best you could get, but still Brandon Johnson, who will likely be a worse mayor than Lori Lightfoot, ended up edging him out by around 16,000 votes. So not a very good thing for safe streets in Chicago right there. It's ironic because these people and their policies are very unpopular, but still, you look and you see what goes on. In many cases, these constituents keep voting for the same weak-on-crime politicians, thinking that something's going to change. So they got rid of Lightfoot, who was unpopular, but then they're replacing her with somebody who is likely going to end up being even more unpopular in the city of Chicago. An utter disaster, but not as big of a disaster as what took place in the state of Wisconsin. An awful result for conservatives. They lost the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin. Daniel Kelly lost by 11 percentage points. That's more than what he lost by in 2020 when he ran, and the election was on the same day as the Democrat primary, and Bernie Sanders didn't drop out of the race until after, so it would have helped the liberal judge cross the finish line there. And the same thing here happened at even a greater scale, even though there was no Democrat primary on the same day. But even in Wisconsin, a state that voted for Donald Trump in 2016, razor thin in 2020, and voted for even Ron Johnson in the midterms, even though he underperformed compared to expectations. Janet, No Jail Janet, her last name's a little bit difficult to pronounce, but we'll call her No Jail Janet because she's very weak on crime. She ended up winning this race by 11 percentage points over Daniel Kelly. He underperformed everywhere. He underperformed in the suburbs, but he also underperformed even worse across the rural counties. Donald Trump's unique base in the state of Wisconsin did not turn out to vote in this election, and it really did show. And you had people that were going out there and they were saying, well, Trump is the reason for these underperformances or whatever, but Donald Trump is not a factor in this race. Dan Kelly even said that he did not want Donald Trump's help. And Trump being absent from this race clearly hurt, because you see Daniel Kelly underperforming Donald Trump in nearly every single county except, I believe, Menominee, which had very low turnout. But that's beside the point. What you do see here is that there was a clear absence of Donald Trump. And there also was skyrocketed, supercharged Democrat turnout in places like Dane County, which is Madison, where Janet won by over 150,000 votes, which is nearly the same raw vote margin that Joe Biden won the county by at a presidential level election that was the highest turnout election in U.S. history. So you're looking at all of the numbers that we see here. Republicans are completely failing to get their base out. Democrats are getting their base out. Definitely, there still is a need for an early vote operation. We thought maybe they'd be turning the corner there, but even in some of these counties like Waukesha, Washington, Ozaukee, you saw a lot of early voting that probably benefited the Democrats more so than not. And the same thing goes for Milwaukee County, same thing goes for Dane, which is where Madison is. So there's a significant turnout problem among Trump's base. Trump's not going to be on the ticket every time, but saying we don't need you, get out of the party, stay out of this race, definitely hurts. And then you look into it, and fundraising's another issue. And then you had Daniel Kelly. He wouldn't even accept donations from the Republican Party. And this is true. And he's like, oh, I want to be seen as nonpartisan. I'm going to cave. I'm not going to get in the arena on these key issues. I'm going to let my opponent define me. And it's like, you absolute moron. What are you doing? You're losing, and you're not even accepting money from your party. However, your opponent is accepting millions of dollars from their party. So what exactly is your goal here? You have to get in the arena to win. You're going to have resources. You can utilize that to your advantage. And obviously, I will say that the abortion issue did help the liberal candidate here. It did help Janet, but still it doesn't have to. You look at what happened in states like Ohio, Georgia, Florida, New York, where you had abortion restrictionists running for the gubernatorial races. They did pretty well. They did just fine even. But if you're not going to exactly step in the arena and you're not going to say, hey, my opponent supports late-term abortion, my opponent's an abortion radical, whatever, you can say that, and it's probably going to help you. It is true that a lot of rural Wisconsinites don't care about the issue nearly as much as people in Alabama, rural Alabama do. That part is true. The Trump base there is a little more agnostic on it, but that doesn't mean that they're like 100% pro-choice or they love Planned Parenthood or pro-abortion, we should say. Pro-choice is their terminology. It's pro-abortion. But what I will say is that these people are somewhat sympathetic to pro-life issues if they're marketed correctly, and you can hit back and say, hey, no, your policies are more radical than even China's and North Korea's, and I take a reasonable pro-life position. You're probably going to be doing a little bit better on that issue. And the Republican Party as a whole has a branding issue. Their messaging is awful. It needs to change. There's a reason why they're not turning out these voters. And it really just shows. There's a massive issue, and Trump's out of the picture. Trump's not on the ballot. Trump wasn't even involved in this race. Yet still, you're doing worse in the suburbs, and you're also doing worse than ever in the rural areas. Back in 2019, or 2020, I should say, when Trump was endorsing, in 2019 too, when Republicans or conservatives won a Supreme Court election in Wisconsin, Donald Trump was going out there expressing his support for these candidates. And in the initial primary, Daniel Kelly, thanks to Trump back in 2020, where it was not on the same day as the Democrat primary, he got a majority. He got 50%. +1. If they didn't even have like a runoff system there, he would have won outright, and it shows. So you're looking into that, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, maybe Donald Trump is not the problem, and his approval rating then is probably roughly around what it is right now. So you're looking at this, and you're seeing a massive underperformance time and time again. The GOP does not know how to fight, and their messaging is awful, and the fundraising thing is a problem. And also, the primary is an issue too. Why have a divided primary? Dems had another challenger to Janet, but they only got 7%. They weren't well funded. And as a result, what happened? Everett Mitchell endorsed Janet. They all came home and then some at the end of the day. Yet on the conservative side, it was dead split between Kelly and Doro. And the reason why a lot of these rural counties back Kelly isn't because, oh, he's a Trump-aligned candidate, he's a populist or whatever. No, it's because he had statewide name recognition. That's why Doro has name recognition in the WOW counties, Waukesha, Washington, Ozaukee, these ancestrally Republican areas. And that's why she did well there, and she probably would have done better than Daniel Kelly there in the general election, but she probably would not have won, and there's no reason for this. You got to clear the field. There's like a near 1-to-1 correlation between divided primaries like this and midterm underperformances, and we saw that across the entire country in the 2022 midterms, and that's why a lot of seats went blue that possibly could have gone red. That's why you saw certain underperformances, even in some red states, in some races, because the primaries were just too divisive. You got to clear the field early. And if you're able to do that, put all the funding behind one candidate. Doro spent a lot of money attacking Kelly in the primaries. That money is then gone by the time the general rolls around. Janet was spending early. She got her name out there, and she got a ridiculous base turnout, and the Republican side or the conservative side was not able to. And for the people that'll go out there and say, well, Kelly was a bad candidate, he was. I don't necessarily believe that Doro was like the best candidate possible. And Kelly wasn't a bad candidate because, oh, he was like too conservative. He ran from his conservative record, and he still got completely shellacked, even worse than the conservatives did combined in the primary. But furthermore, it's like people will say Doro would have won. It's like, what made her so special? I mean, she really wasn't. She had scandals, and that probably would have hurt her as well down the stretch, even if she would have been better funded or did a couple points better in some of the WOW counties. She also lacked statewide name recognition, which was a problem for her in the primary. And also, she previously had a weak on crime history. She supported eliminating cash bail. That lost by 35 points on the same ticket, including Dane County. And in terms of the whole like abortion issue, which some people will say is the number one factor for this, it's also pretty evident that that was not the major determining factor because Kelly didn't mention it at all. He allowed himself to get defined. I think Doro would have had a very similar problem, but that's beside the point. Either way, the divisive primary was a big, big problem, and it would have impacted either Kelly or Doro, regardless of whatever would happen. And also, it's important to understand that Nodal, who was far more conservative than Kelly, outperformed Kelly in the same district by 10 points, which actually held that state Senate supermajority for Republicans, which is very interesting. And he said he would be open to just impeaching No Jail Janet, where Kelly just tried to run as nonpartisan and he rejected any money that the state party wanted to throw his way. It's absolutely ridiculous. And furthermore, if Donald Trump is not going to be going out there and endorsing, he probably should have endorsed Kelly regardless. He has a lot going on right now. I understand that, but it definitely would have helped him out in 2024 in Wisconsin, whether Kelly likes him or not, if he is going to be on the Supreme Court instead of Janet. So definitely he should have done that. But still, other creators, a lot of people, a lot of media companies on the right wing, whether you want to say it's Fox or Daily Wire or whatever, they don't really draw enough attention to these key races. There's a lot of conservatives that are in tune with politics right now online. A lot of people don't even know these elections are happening. There's a lot of power in conservative media that doesn't exactly get used for the means of electoral politics. We didn't see it used a lot in the midterms. We'll see it in presidential years for Donald Trump, of course, but we need to see a little bit more of that down the stretch, even in some of these low-profile elections. You might say it's boring stuff, I understand some people will view it that way, but at the same time, the left does this quite a bit with their candidates. They'll prop them up on every single liberal media outlet or channel. They'll be drawing as much attention to these races as possible, it seems, at least the major outlets or the wannabe major outlets. But we don't exactly see the same thing on the right. I'd like to see a little bit more attention shined on this because there is a big online community, and we need to get people energized and voting the same way that the left does in elections like these. And that part is very true. But Daniel Kelly going down by 11 points, embarrassing for Republicans in the state of Wisconsin, and that's something that needs to change. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.